You are not here by accident. A deep stirring, a part of you long suppressed, has begun to surface. It's a familiar ache, isn't it? A subtle dissonance beneath the practiced calm. This feeling, this unbidden calling, is the echo of a pact often made in the cradle of childhood, a generational programming that whispers survival through self-betrayal. We are trained to mute the primal roar, to smooth the wild edges, to polish a veneer that feels both foreign and desperately sought. Your instincts, once your compass, slowly muted, your righteous anger, a vital current, dimmed to a flicker, all in service of a crafted persona, a comfortable lie. This video unpacks that invisible architecture. We will traverse the landscape of your unseen self, guided by the wisdom of Jung's persona and the unsettling clarity of the shadow. Think of the Gnostics' exile, that profound sense of inner homelessness. We will decode your emotional blueprint, not as a diagnosis, but as a recognition of an ancient blueprint. This journey is not about motivation or fleeting inspiration. It is a precise, unflinching deconstruction of the self-lie ingrained through years of seeking external validation. We confront the cost of not being truly seen. And real quick, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more videos just like this. Now let's keep going. There's a sound, barely audible at first, a tremor in the quiet space you've built. It's a bell, not of metal and hammer, but of the soul itself. It rings for those who have wandered far from their inner sanctuary, those whose footsteps have become a ritual of alienation. This bell is the persistent hum of your unlived life, a resonance that insists on acknowledgement. It's the low thrum of the ancestral drumbeat you've tried to ignore, the ancestral memory that refuses to be erased. It calls you back, not to a place, but to a forgotten state of being. You might mistake it for anxiety, for restlessness, for a vague dissatisfaction that clings to the edges of your days. But it is more ancient, more fundamental. It is the call of recognition, the soul's insistent whisper that you are more than the sum of your compromises. This sound pulls you towards the precipice of your own being, a threshold where the familiar world begins to blur and the unseen becomes tangible. It is the first invitation to turn inward, to face the architecture of your silent exile. This enduring echo seeks to awaken the slumbering giant within. But what deeper truths lie dormant, waiting for this resonant call to finally break through the persistent noise of external demands? In the next section, we will examine the quiet pacts that first taught us to tune out this inner bell. The first instruction, absorbed before language fully formed, was to be quiet, to be still. To be what they needed you to be, not who you inherently were. This was the silencing pact, the unconscious agreement that your raw, untamed self was too much. It's a contract signed in the soft tissues of infancy, sealed with a parent's gaze, a parent's mood. Your vibrant exuberance, your spontaneous tears, your unbridled laughter, all were gradually measured against the barometer of approval. Too loud, too much, too different. The lessons were subtle, woven into the fabric of everyday life. A sigh, a turned shoulder, the absence of a smile. Each nuance is an invisible marker, guiding you away from the wilder shores of your being. Your inner voice, once a clear stream, began to eddy and slow. This was not malicious, not always consciously designed. It was the desperate attempt of a system to maintain equilibrium, a primitive drive for safety. But in the process, a vital part of your authentic expression was laid to rest, a sacrifice on the altar of perceived harmony. This unspoken agreement leaves a scar, a phantom limb of the self that aches for expression. But what happens when the silence itself becomes a cage, a performance of peace? The next section explores the profound impact of placing parents on an unassailable pedestal, initiating the first godly structures within the psyche. The parent becomes the first god, a towering figure whose approval is the sun on which your nascent world depends. And in that dependent state, a fundamental split occurs. You learn to worship this deity, offering up your authentic desires as daily sacrifices. This early god is both provider and judge. Their smile, a blessing, their frown, an eclipse. You become a cartographer of their moods, an oracle of their unspoken needs. Your own landscape disappears beneath the immense gravity of their presence. This reverence, this absolute reliance, is the fertile ground where the persona begins to sprout. You don't yet know it's a mask, only that it's the face that earns you warmth and prevents the chilling void of disfavor. It's a costume woven from borrowed robes and whispered judgments. The world outside this immediate orbit holds no such power, no such clarity. The parent's mandate becomes the only truth, their perception the only reality. You internalize their gaze, learning to see yourself through the lens of their expectations. This foundational worship shapes the very architecture of your inner world. But what happens when the divine authority begins to crack, revealing the mortal beneath? The next section delves into how this early performance, built for acceptance, solidifies into the costume of escape. The persona was your costume of escape, a meticulously crafted facade designed to navigate the treacherous terrain of external judgment. You learn to wear it well, adjusting its seams and hemlines to fit the ever-shifting demands of the world. It wasn't born of vanity, but of necessity, a way to shield the tender, vulnerable self from the sharp edges of disapproval. Each compliment, each nod of agreement reinforced the illusion that this mask was not a barrier, but a bridge to belonging. You became adept at playing the role, the one prescribed or the one you thought was most likely to succeed. The genuine self, the one that instinctually recoiled or yearned, was hidden away, too risky to reveal. It's the exiled king in his own castle. This performance allowed you to operate in the world, to function, to achieve, but it came at a cost. The constant vigilance, the subtle tension of maintaining the act, began to wear you down. The disconnect between the outward show and the inward truth grew into a chasm. This carefully constructed identity offered protection, but it also became a prison. And the very act of escaping through this persona, while necessary for survival, also severed a connection to your own soul. But what happens when the applause fades and the costume begins to fray? The next section examines how even positive reinforcement can become a corrosive poison. Praise can be a poison, sweet and insidious, a drug that keeps you tethered to the performance. You chased it, mistaking its fleeting warmth for genuine sustenance, for proof of your worth. Each accolade, each commendation was another brick in the wall of your adopted identity. This external validation became the very air you breathed, the fuel that powered your persona. You learned to anticipate what would earn you favor, to sculpt your actions and words to elicit a positive response. The genuine impulse was sacrificed at the altar of applause. The joy of creation, the simple satisfaction of a task well done, was overshadowed by the need for an outward seal of approval. It was no longer about the act itself, but about the rewards it brought. Good job became a siren song, luring you further from your own inner compass. This thirst for praise can hollow you out, leaving you dependent on the fickle moods of others. The mask is polished not for your own comfort, but for the adulation of the crowd. You become a performer in your own life, perpetually seeking the next standing ovation. This pursuit of external validation, though seemingly positive, can ultimately undermine your core sense of self. But what happens when the world stops applauding and the hollowness is finally revealed? The next section delves into the crucible where this hollowness is forged into a deep, pervasive shame. The shame forge is where the raw ore of your authentic self is hammered into shapes that better fit the world's expectations. It's a place of intense heat, where self-judgment burns away what feels unacceptable, what feels too wild, too vulnerable, too true. This forging process is often initiated in childhood, born from the sting of criticism, the shadow of disapproval. Your unique qualities, the very essence of your being, are deemed flawed, imperfect, in need of correction. Each perceived failure, each misstep, is a blow from the smith's hammer. You learn to internalize the external critique, turning it into a relentless inner voice. This voice polishes away your rough edges, but in doing so, it erodes your very foundation. It seeks to make you smooth, compliant, and ultimately invisible. The shame experienced here is not about specific actions, but about the very fabric of your existence. It whispers that you are fundamentally lacking, that your true self is inherently bad. This belief becomes a secret burden carried silently through life. This internal blacksmith continues its work, shaping you into a palatable form. But the heat of the forge leaves its mark, a painful imprint on the soul. What is truly lost in this relentless shaping when the original form is obliterated? The next section reveals the profound division within the psyche that this process creates, a split born from Gnostic exile. The Gnostic split is the profound division within the soul, a fracturing born from the insistence that the true self is somehow flawed, tainted, something to be hidden or escaped. It's the internal exile, the exile from one's own being. Imagine a perfect vessel, whole and complete, suddenly shattered. One part is held up for admiration, polished and presented to the world. This is the persona, the acceptable face. The other part, the broken shards, the wild, untamed essence, is cast into the darkness, deemed unworthy. This division is not a choice, but an imposed trauma. It's the deeply ingrained belief that to be loved, to be accepted, certain parts of yourself must be disowned. Your passion might be exiled, your rage entombed, your vulnerability banished to the shadows. This inner schism creates a profound sense of unease, a feeling of being incomplete, of being haunted by a ghost you cannot comprehend. You live with constant, low-grade suffering, the echo of that original fracture. The light you present to the world is a compensation for the darkness you carry within. This internal exile leaves a wound that festers, a silent scream in the depths of your psyche. But in this fractured state, where can the truth begin to emerge, where the light can begin to seep back into the hidden places? The next section reveals the one object that can no longer maintain the illusion. The mirror refuses to lie, yet we have become masters at avoiding its gaze. Its surface, once a tool for recognition, becomes a gate we fear to pass through, lest we confront the stranger who stares back. The reflections we choose to see are curated, filtered through the persona we've so carefully constructed. We catch glimpses of ourselves, perhaps, in fleeting moments of candidness, but quickly avert our eyes, smoothing over any trace of authenticity that dares to surface. This avoidance is a defensive strategy. The unacknowledged parts of ourselves, the exiled shadow, wait in the wings, their presence a constant, unsettling undercurrent. The mirror shows not just the face we present, but the phantom limb of the self we have amputated. It reflects the dissonance between the roles we play and the whispers of who we might truly be. It holds up the evidence of our inner exile, the silent testament to the parts of ourselves we've disowned. The polished surface becomes a veil, protecting us from seeing what lies beneath. Yet, the mirror remains an impartial witness to our internal architecture. It cannot uphold the illusion forever. But what if the confrontation with this unvarnished reflection leads not to despair, but to a new kind of knowing? The next section explores the illusion of control and the profound entrapment found in the pursuit of effortless perfection. The trap of mastery is a gilded cage, built with the bricks of perceived competence and the mortar of relentless self-improvement. We strive to perfect each aspect of ourselves, believing that ultimate control will lead to ultimate peace. This pursuit suggests that every flaw is an error to be corrected, every rough edge and imperfection to be smoothed away. The messy, unpredictable nature of true growth is anathema to the master's ambition. It's about conquering, not evolving. We become architects of our own imprisonment, meticulously designing a self that is unassailable, unshakable. Each acquired skill, each conquered fear, is a reinforcement of the persona, a testament to our ability to manage and control. The wildness within is tamed, its power redirected into predictable channels. This striving for mastery often masks a deeper fear, the fear of vulnerability, the fear of not being enough. It's a desperate attempt to prove our worth through achievement, to earn our place in the world by demonstrating our absolute command. But true mastery rarely looks like this. In this relentless quest for control, we mistake the absence of struggle for the presence of true fulfillment. We become so focused on achieving the perfect outward effect that we lose sight of the inner landscape. But what if the greatest expertise lies not in control, but in surrender? The next section delves into a mythic figure whose mastery led to profound tragedy, a master of fate who could not escape his own destiny. Oedipus in the fog. The legend echoes in the dust of our own confusion, a testament to the human struggle against an unseen fate. We navigate our lives blinded by a mist of our own making, a fog of unacknowledged truths and inherited patterns. Oedipus, the king who solved riddles, who commanded respect, found himself ensnared by the very destinies he sought to outwit. His pursuit of knowledge, his drive to uncover the truth, ultimately led him to the horrifying revelation of his own deepest transgression. This myth mirrors our own journeys, where the very act of seeking answers can lead us into darker, more complex understandings. We chase clarity only to find ourselves lost in a labyrinth of our own unconscious desires and ancestral destinies. The fog is not external, but a shroud woven from within. We believe we are acting with purpose, with volition, but we are often merely playing out a script written long before our conscious awareness. The patterns repeat, the symbols reappear, and we find ourselves enacting roles we do not fully comprehend. The hubris of mastery, the belief that we can control our fate, is often our undoing. This ancient story whispers a warning, a reminder that true sight may come not from conquering the darkness, but from recognizing its presence. But what happens when the desire for knowledge leads not to tragedy, but to a profound act of defiance against cosmic order? The next section turns to a figure who chose exile over subservience. Lucifer's refusal, the primal no that shattered the celestial order, a myth of rebellion born from the refusal to bow, the refusal to be commanded. It's the archetype of the independent spirit, the one who chooses the solitary path and the perilous freedom over obedient belonging. This figure embodies the terrifying beauty of dissent, the courage to stand apart, even if it means eternal solitude. The story is not about goodness or evil, but about the radical assertion of self-determination in the face of overwhelming power. It's the unmasking of true conviction. Lucifer represents the part of us that aches for autonomy, the part that recoils from enforced conformity. It is the spark of fire that refuses to be extinguished, the inner voice that whispers, "I will not serve." This refusal can be both a source of immense power and profound loneliness. The exile that follows this defiance is not merely geographical, but spiritual. It's a separation from the collective, a descent into the unknown, a journey undertaken alone. Yet in this aloneness lies the potential for a unique and unadulterated form of being. This myth offers a glimpse into the terrifying allure of radical freedom, the ultimate consequence of listening only to one's own inner decree. But what is the currency of this freedom, and what unseen debts does such a monumental act of defiance incur upon the soul? The next section reveals how those debts manifest as invisible burdens. Invisible guilt as ancestral debt. It clings to us like a second skin, a weight passed down through generations, a silent inheritance of unspoken sorrows and unrectified wrongs. We carry the burdens of those who came before, their unresolved pain resonating within our own nervous systems. This guilt is not born of personal transgression alone, but from a collective psychic inheritance. It's the echo of ancestral pacts, of broken promises, of suppressed rage and unexpressed grief that were too overwhelming for previous generations to process. These unresolved energies linger, seeking equilibrium. You might feel it as a pervasive anxiety, a sense of owing something you cannot name, a vague fear of retribution for sins not your own. It's the ghost of a promise unkept, the whisper of a justice denied, settling into the marrow of your bones. This ancestral debt creates a subconscious drive to punish oneself, to reenact patterns of loss and suffering, almost as if attempting to settle a karmic balance. It's a perpetuation of pain, a continuation of the cycle through unconscious replication. The systems we build, the rules we follow, often serve to contain this inherited unease. This invisible burden shapes our choices, our relationships, and our deepest fears, often without our conscious understanding. We are entangled in a web of psychic obligations. But what happens when this inherited weight begins to feel unbearable, when the orphan within can no longer bear the silence? The next section turns to this solitary figure. The inner orphan watches in silence, a tiny, forgotten figure huddled in the forgotten corners of the psyche. This is the part of you that felt abandoned, not by a parent necessarily, but by your own authentic self, exiled by the demands of survival. This orphan is the embodiment of your unmet needs, the child who learned to suppress their cries for fear of rejection, for fear of being too much. They learned that to be seen, one had to be quiet, to be accommodating, to disappear into the background. Their voice went unheard, their tears unspoken. In this silent observation, the orphan witnesses the performances, the compromises, the constant negotiation of self. They see the facade being maintained, the genuine desires being stifled, and they feel a profound, unarticulated grief. It's the loneliness of wearing a mask that conceals the very being who longs for connection. This inner child carries the deep wounds of not being fully acknowledged, of not being truly held. They are the silent witnesses to our internal exile, the constant reminder of what was lost in the drive for acceptance. Their presence is a soft ache, a persistent emptiness that seeks solace. This silent observer yearns for recognition, for acknowledgement of their pain, for the simple comfort of being truly seen and accepted for who they are. But what happens when this orphan finally finds the courage to break their silence, to step out of the shadows and demand to be heard? The next section confronts the inevitable breakdown that precedes true renewal. The collapse before resurrection. It is the unavoidable descent, the crumbling of the carefully constructed edifice that has long protected a fragile truth. The structures we have relied upon, the personas we have worn, begin to crack and fall, revealing the raw, unvarnished self beneath. This is not an end, but a necessary undoing. The facade, however necessary for survival, can no longer hold the weight of authenticity. The illusion of control shatters, the carefully curated identity dissolves, and for a time, there is only chaos, emptiness, and a profound sense of disorientation. It feels like drowning, like being lost at sea without a compass. The familiar landmarks disappear, the ground beneath your feet dissolves, and you are left adrift in the wreckage of what was. This is the dark night of the soul, the tomb of the old self. Yet, within this dismantling lies the seed of rebirth. The external supports that have held you captive are removed, creating space for something new to emerge. It is in this state of utter vulnerability, stripped bare of all pretense, that the true self can finally breathe. This moment of dissolution is terrifying, yes, but it is also sacred. It is the fertile soil from which true growth can begin. But once the debris of the former self has settled and the raw essence is exposed, what truly remains? The next section asks the most vital question of all. Who would you be without the mask? The question hangs in the air, echoing the profound silence that follows the collapse. It's an invitation, a challenge, and a terrifying possibility. Imagine yourself unburdened by the need for approval, unshaped by the expectations of others. Who is the being that emerges when the costumes are shed, when the performances cease, when the carefully constructed persona dissolves like mist in the morning sun? What are the unadorned desires, the raw emotions, the untamed spirit that has been hidden away for so long? This is not about finding a new identity, but about remembering one that was always there, buried beneath layers of societal conditioning and personal compromise. It's about reclaiming the exiled parts of yourself, the wildness, the vulnerability, the fierce authenticity that once pulsed with life. The journey has led you to this precipice, to the edge of knowing your true self, not as a concept, but as a lived reality. It's a realization that carries immense weight, for it demands a radical honesty, a willingness to embrace the incompletely understood. To truly answer this question is to embark on the most profound adventure of all, an exploration into the uncharted territory of your own soul. But the path forward requires a deep and abiding courage, a willingness to finally step into the light of your own becoming. Now that concludes this video. Make sure to subscribe for more videos and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. We'll see you in the next one.